The second hour roundtable starts now.
Hello there. Welcome back to Ladies Can We Talk. We're in our second hour where I have my leading ladies join me. Dorinda Randall and Jenny McGarry are here. Hey, girls.
Hey.
Okay. And we do have fun out here. We actually usually meet at my house or someplace before the show. And honestly, we're into a political conversation before we're actually completely seated around the table. But we are, in this segment, we are scheduled to have Mayor Beth Van Duyne on the phone. And I just talked to her about 2 hours ago. Now I'm sure we're having some problem with the phone. Is that right? Okay, we don't have her. Okay, well, while we're waiting to get Mayor Beth Van Duyne, who is truly America's mayor, I guess we're having some challenge on the phone line right now. But Mayor Beth Van Duyne is the mayor of Irving, and she, I will give you a little background before, I'm sure we'll get her back in a moment here, but, we do have her. Yes, okay. Hi, I hope, Mayor Van Duyne?
Yes, how are you doing? Apologize for that. Technical difficulties.
No problem. We probably had a problem at our end. But anyway, so glad you're on the phone. Well, I was just going to start telling our listeners, I said you're one of America's mayors. I mean, really, truly, you're doing a stellar job in a challenging time in America and in your city in Irving, Texas. And I mentioned, and I didn't get into the story much, but I think our listeners know in a 30-second nutshell that Irving is the place where there was a young student in a junior high school or high school who came into school with something that looked like a bomb in a briefcase or a pencil case, whatever he was calling it, and it was actually a clock that he had purchased and taken apart and rebuilt, and it was an unsolicited science project, and because he according to some people, acted in an invasive manner, was for a short period of time arrested or at least taken away, and then everything was dropped. But he's a Muslim student, and he's made quite he and his family really have made quite a complaint over the question whether he was treated badly because he is Muslim. And so you, Beth Van Duyne, as mayor, have done a stellar job, and I want to give that background to this case and just quickly get the one issue off everyone's minds. I know they're asking, which is essentially, and there have been stories in the news that he has been, that some demand has been made for a settlement. There's no lawsuit, but demand for a settlement. And I know you can't talk about it much, but are you able to quick tell us what is going on there?
Well, we received a demand letter from his attorney, and it is demanding $10 million from the city of Irving, plus an apology from the mayor and from the police chief. And there is another demand letter that went to the Irving ISD demanding $5 million.
Wow.
Well, gee, he could retire on that.
Well, and in addition, we've also gotten 28 of our Democratic congressmen have written a letter to the DOJ demanding an investigation into civil rights violations as a result of this incident. And one of the things that's really frustrating to me is none of them bothered to call the city, none of the congressmen bothered to call the city and find out actually what happened, including one of the Congress members that represents Irving.
Oh, wow.
Whose name was on that list, who has my personal cell phone number. That's a little frustrating when everybody just reads, 140 characters on Twitter and decides they know exactly what happened in a case.
I'm so glad I did not know that particular fact that these people are encouraging investigation of Irving. I want to go ahead.
No.
I want to step back because you told me some things on the phone today I hadn't realized that were the impetus to start with much earlier in the year, where the city of Irving and you as mayor had issued a resolution essentially supporting the American Law for American Courts bill, which unfortunately did not pass in the Texas legislature. But could you share that background with our listeners about how the whole discussion got started in Irving?
Well, there was a piece that went out, I believe it was on CBS 11, that was breaking story that the first Islamic tribunal practicing Sharia law was in Irving, and that went out virally. A lot of people picked it up, and we started getting calls at City Hall. I started getting emails. I started getting calls asking, but within 2 or 3 days, the tag was not the first Islamic court, the first Islamic tribunal practicing Sharia law in Irving. It's Irving creates the first Sharia law court. And I, as mayor, wanted to put an end to that rumor. So I went to my Facebook page and I made a fairly clear statement that we honor the laws in America. We follow our Constitution. I, as an elected representative, took an oath that I was going to follow the Constitution, uphold Texas state law, and that I would look into it. If we found anything that did not make sense, I would find out what we could possibly do and put it into it. I also said that, I supported the First Amendment. I support freedom of religion, and I also support equal rights under the law. Well, that has escalated into a media attack of just outrageous proportions. I went to this Islamic Tribunal site. I wanted to see for myself firsthand, not reading about it in the paper, but I wanted to see firsthand what it was. They have listed, or they had at this point in time, they've changed the site numerous times since, but they had at that point in time identified themselves as attorneys. None of them have a law degree. None of them are licensed with the state bar. They identified themselves as judges. Under areas of law practice, they had product liability, business and real estate litigation, family law. They charged for their services, and they have a section on their website called Our Constitution. Wow. And when you click on it, the first line starts, the purpose of this court. So this was nothing that I created out of nowhere. This is nothing that this was an attack on any type of mosque. This was responding in kind, as I believe every elected official should do. But the reporting has been abysmal on this. Mainstream has not even gone to their website. Wow. And if they haven't reported anything that's on it.
I'm really glad you're telling this story because, as I mentioned earlier, I hadn't heard this until today. And I knew that there had been a support for American law for American courts in your city council, but that was first. I didn't know what had prompted it, and I think these kind of details are vital for media to have some context in telling the story and giving you context for what you're doing. But I want to zip forward to, so that all happened. Then this young man brought what anyone who ever would look at this picture would assume was a bomb to school and caused disruption, and then his family, instead of doing what most parents would do, which is say, I'm so sorry my child caused a disruption, please don't give him detention, they were instead accusing the school of wrongdoing. But the follow-up that I think is amazing that has occurred, and I'm not sure all our listeners heard about, was a young woman who came to the defense of the school in question, and as she was a former student there, she was a graduate. And you tell what she had to say?
She was phenomenal. She graduated valedictorian from MacArthur High School just 2 years ago. And she wrote an amazing email to the principal of the school, supporting their decisions, saying that as a Muslim student, when she attended the high school there, she was a little nervous coming in as a freshman, and that the school basically bent over backwards to make her feel comfortable. And she did not recognize the school or the district or the principal or the teachers that were being maligned by the media. That was not her experience at the school at all. And I have since spoke with her. I have actually met her on a number of occasions. She's an amazing woman and has won multiple awards, including one that the city of Irving acknowledged her for. We had her at City Hall, and we gave her an award. And this was years ago, before any of this ever happened. And, it's heartwarming to see that kind of appreciation for our schools and our teachers in our city. What's really frustrating is you saw it kind of quickly on one broadcast station locally, but all of the other stations, Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, all of these stations that are maligning the city and speaking as if it is some kind of anti-Islamic city aren't picking up on the facts. That story from that one particular girl, and there's many others, but that one was very heartwarming. She went to the same high school, loved it, found it to be extraordinarily supportive, and nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about that story.
We're speaking with Mayor Beth Van Duyne of Irving, and Irving is still in the middle of this conflict involving a young man who brought a bomb-looking device to school, which later turned out to be a clock, but he has created quite an uproar in making, at least through his attorney, making a demand for a settlement over his outrage and embarrassment, and trying to claim essentially Islamophobia was behind it. And I think this, I have to ask you, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but I'm curious about, I hear people speculating that it almost seemed like it was a setup. That the parents, at least, may have just enjoyed the controversy created. Do you have any sense of that?
I don't have any comment on that. I know that the city that I love, the city that I represent, and the city that I've fought for the last 12 years, is not the city that I see reflected in the paper. And that, to me, is the biggest travesty out of all of this. We have a wonderfully diverse city. We have a wonderfully successful city. We have a warm and accepting community. And the people who live here, if there's a silver lining to all of this, this is really, to me, bound very strongly together. The school district, the parents, the city, and has really shown an immense amount of support for our urban police department. They have a tough job, and you see what police are dealing with across the country. And this has really, I think, opened up people's eyes to how tough their job is, because no matter what decisions they make, 20/20 hindsight will always prove them wrong. And in the most vicious of times, our residents that live here are saying we support the police. We think they do a great job. They are honorable men. They're professional men, and we wish them the best. And to me, especially around Christmas time, that's the best message that we can get out.
Mary Van Duyne, I love hearing that. And, you mentioned media bias. We could probably do a whole nother show sometime just on media bias, because I have to say in particular, we're doing this. We have listeners to this show around the country who tune in online, but we're based in Dallas, and the big newspaper in Dallas is Dallas Morning News. And I have just found their coverage on some issues just egregiously biased. But in this particular case, I tried to look, and maybe I missed it, but I never saw them cover the story, for example, of this young girl who was also Muslim who finished at that school 2 years earlier and praised the school. I never saw that covered in that newspaper. And I feel troubled for America that the media seems to be more part of an effort to make sensationalism, to cause controversy, to report controversy, than to bring truth.
Well, I think you've seen that. It's apparent that it's clickbait. They tend to be more fight promoters now to get clicks on their website to be able to sell advertising.
Yeah, I like that.
And there was a time when journalism, people would always argue about it, right? But I think people really had a respect for journalists. And now I don't know that you have too many real journalists out there. It's bloggers.
Right.
And it's all about getting the story out first. Forget about its accuracy. Just get that information out. We can always, ask questions later. But we want to be the first to break the story, as untrue as it may be, as many issues as it may cause down the road in the long term. If you look at this one case that happened in September at MacArthur High School, within about 8 hours of this story being posted, it was viral. Right. You had our president of the United States weighing in on Twitter. And his Twitter, by the way, came about 20 minutes before a picture of that object was ever even released.
Wow.
So him saying, cool clock kid, he didn't even know what it looked like.
Very bizarre.
Yeah.
Very bizarre.
Well, I understand your situation, your position. You wouldn't comment on the setup feel of it, but that just is very creepy that the President of the United States back in Washington or wherever he was knew enough about this case to tweet out something when the picture of the object in question, which, Dorinda, you put something on Facebook one time about a college. Someone took around a picture of this.
There was a guy that had gone out on a college campus, and he took a picture of the exact
Clock Boys
briefcase thing that he did. That was a metal steel briefcase that he put the contents of a clock that counted backwards. He took that around to the college campus, and every single college kid that they asked, each of them said it's a bomb. Every single one of them. And you know what, Mayor Van Duyne, this is Dorinda, and one thing that I love that you said, that even before the Clock Boy incidents happened, you were on one of the local TV stations, and one of them said, it sure is wild, this Sharia law. Do you feel like you're Islamophobic? And she goes, it's funny. I'm for American law, for American courts. I once even mention a religion. You did. And I thought, she is so brilliant and quick on being able to defend yourself with truth and be able to point to the media bias without even actually having to say it. And I thank you in your city for showing mayors how to react when it comes to this, because it's probably going to come to other towns.
Oh, yes.
Well,
Yes.
I appreciate you saying that. And I do think you have a good point. And that's been the point that I've been trying to, I think, really espouse and get out there is anybody who says that to be pro-American or pro-American laws is somehow anti-Islamic says a lot more about the person making the accusation
Good point.
than it does about the person supporting their country. And in this case, an elected official who took an oath that is exactly what they would do.
We're doing your job.
Defend the
Through an oath. It's nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah. We're speaking with Mayor Beth Van Duyne of Irving, Texas. I will urge our listeners to go to Breitbart if you're curious to read more facts about this case. Breitbart.com has been covering this pretty well. You can read some things there. And actually, I encourage you to follow this case, because this may not be the only one we have in America where we just have a stirred up public, facts not getting out there, and then really a very poor and unfair impression created by the great city of Irving. So, Mayor Van Duyne, thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great night.
Thank you. Merry
Christmas.
Christmas. This is Debbie Georgatos, Brenda Randall, Jenny McGarry, and we're going to zip off to our break. When we come back, we're going to tell you everything you have to know about the Democrat debate, the GOP debate, not everything. We're going to have lots of good discussion about it, so stay tuned to Ladies Can We Talk.